A suitcase sits half unpacked, damp with Pattaya's heavy salt air. The passport inside remains valid, but the owner has vanished, erased by a silent, psychological trap. And it begins the moment you step off the bus from Bangkok. The heat hits you first. A thick, humid wall smelling of diesel, street food, and old salt water. Then, the lights. A mile-long corridor of electric pink and neon green. It is beautiful. It is overwhelming. And for a certain type of man, it is fatal. Every year, hundreds of ordinary men arrive in Pattaya for a 2-week holiday. They are engineers, teachers, retirees, and office workers. They have mortgages, families, and pension plans back home. Yet, months later, their apartments in London, Munich, or Sydney sit empty. Their phones go dead. Their bank accounts are drained to the absolute cent. They have not been kidnapped by cartels. They have not been murdered in dark alleys. They have chosen to disappear. This is the Pattaya syndrome. It is not a clinical diagnosis, but a documented psychological shift that targets lonely Western men. It is a meticulously designed psychological ecosystem, an invisible trap that does not capture you by force, but by invitation. It targets a specific, growing vulnerability in the modern Western male: systemic isolation. But here is the twist. The trap isn't set by predatory bars, corrupt police, or local scammers. It is actively built, funded, and maintained by the victim's own brain seeking escape from Western isolation. In fact, clinical data suggests that the highly logical, analytical men, the engineers, the computer scientists, the accountants, are often the easiest to break. Their brains are simply too good at rationalizing their own destruction. In this documentary, we will trace the exact 5-stage descent of a real expat who lost everything. We will call him David. David was a 48-year-old IT manager from a quiet suburb outside London. He did not come to Thailand to ruin his life. He came for a simple beach holiday to escape a gray winter and the wreckage of a quiet divorce. But Pattaya knew his weaknesses better than he did. This is the anatomical blueprint of how a man's mind is systematically dismantled, piece by piece, and why no viewer, no matter how rational, is entirely immune to the trap. It takes exactly 72 hours to completely rewire a human brain. When David first arrived, he was cautious. He kept his passport locked in his hotel safety box. He calculated his daily budget down to the last Thai baht. He promised himself he would stay away from the neon-drenched side streets. But Pattaya does not attack your wallet first. It attacks your nervous system. Back home, David was invisible. He was a middle-aged man in a society that had long stopped looking at him. In London, people actively avoided eye contact on the morning tube. If he fell on the pavement, people would step over him. He was a utility, not a human. In Pattaya, the moment he stepped onto Soi Buah Khao, he was the center of the universe. Smiling faces greeted him at every corner. Warm hands reached out to touch his arm. He was offered instant, effortless validation from women who, in his home country, would not look in his direction. This is not accidental. The entire sensory landscape of Pattaya is scientifically optimized to mimic unconditional social acceptance. The open-air beer bars, the low pink lighting, the constant rhythmic thumping of the music, they are designed to eliminate social barriers. But here is the, wait, what moment. Your brain does not recognize this validation as a business transaction. Even when you know it intellectually, the ancient reptile brain treats the sudden social isolation of the West as a literal threat to physical survival. Conversely, it treats the noisy, chaotic bar environment as a safe, welcoming tribe. To David's dopamine-starved mind, the neon lights and laughing voices felt like returning home after a lifetime in exile. His social anxiety, built up over decades of cold Western isolation, vanished in a single evening. Then came night 3. This is the chemical tipping point. The brain, flooded with an unprecedented surge of dopamine and oxytocin, begins to reevaluate its entire life script. It makes a fatal calculation. It decides that the gray, stressful world of his past was the aberration, and this neon-drenched paradise is his true, natural home. The music stops. Only the quiet, rhythmic ticking of a ceiling fan is heard. David sits on the edge of his bed. The room is silent, save for the hum of the old air conditioner. His heart is still racing. He looks at his watch. He has spent more money in 3 days than he usually spends in a week. But he does not feel regret. He feels alive. For the first time in 10 years, he feels wanted. The trap has sprung its first teeth, and David is smiling. He looks at a half-empty glass of local beer on a wet plastic table outside. The neon pink light of a bar sign reflects perfectly in the amber liquid. It is beautiful. It is mesmerizing. To David, that glass represents everything he has been denied: warmth, acceptance, and the intoxicating feeling of being seen. He drinks it down, and with it, his last remaining doubts. The second stage of the descent is the systematic suspension of disbelief. David knew, intellectually, that Pattaya is a transactional city. He had read the forums. He knew the bars are highly profitable businesses. He knew the girls are professional entertainers, working to support families in the rural north. But the human ego is a fragile, desperate thing. It craves to be the exception to the rule. He met her on his 5th night. She was polite, attentive, and seemingly untouched by the cynicism of the industry. She did not ask him for expensive drinks. Instead, she asked him about his life. She listened to his stories about his boring IT job, as if he were an astronaut describing a voyage to Mars. This is the art of emotional labor. It is highly effective because it leverages the deep-seated, ignored emotional starvation of the Western male. In the offices of Pattaya's bar owners, there is a word for men like David. They call them the buffalo. It is a term of mockery used to describe a customer who has crossed the line from client to protector. A man who believes that while every other girl in the city is playing a game, his girl is different. She is the good girl, forced into a hard life by tragic circumstance. And he is the knight who must rescue her. But here is the contradiction. The bar girl isn't lying to him. She actually wants him to believe the lie because it makes her emotional labor easier. In fact, other Western expats on local forums will actively defend this delusion, praising each other for being saviors while attacking anyone who suggests they are being played. Let us look at what David is running from. A rainy Monday morning in London. The damp asphalt. The crowded bus. The silent, cold stares of strangers. Now look at his life today. A sun-drenched motorbike ride along Jomtien Beach. Warm wind in his face. A beautiful young woman holding onto his waist, laughing. Your brain, when presented with these two choices, will lie to you to protect the warmer one. It will actively suppress logic. David begins to send money to her family's farm. He believes he is investing in a future. In reality, he is paying rent on an illusion, and the lease is about to run out. By week 4, the transformation begins to require sacrifice. To maintain the illusion that Pattaya is his true home, David's mind must do something terrifying. It must destroy his past. He begins to view his old life not just as boring, but as an active enemy. His friends back home, who express concern when he misses his flight back, are no longer friends. They are captors trying to drag him back to the dungeon. His daughter calls him from London. She asks when he is coming home. She says his apartment lease is expiring, and his landlord is threatening legal action. To David, her voice sounds cold, demanding, and distant. She represents the gray world of duty, bills, and aging. Thailand represents youth, freedom, and worship. He makes a choice. He hangs up the phone. But here is the tragic contradiction of stage 3. He doesn't ignore his daughter because he stops loving her. He ignores her because he loves his memory of her too much to let her see what he has become. He blocks her to protect her from his new reality, convincing himself that she is better off without a broken father. Dad, are you there? Please call me. We are worried. The police say they can't do anything because you're a consenting adult. Dad, please. David looks at the glowing screen of his phone. He feels a momentary pang of guilt. But then he looks at the woman sitting across from him, smiling, handing him a cold drink. The guilt is too painful to hold. So his brain makes a defensive move. He blocks his daughter's number. He blocks his brother. He stops checking his Western emails. He has committed psychological suicide. His old identity is dead. He is no longer David, the responsible IT manager. He is Dave, the generous expat king of the soy. He has cut the anchor. This is the point of no return. In psychology, this is known as ego death, the complete abandonment of the former self. To survive in the fantasy, David must believe that his past was a lie, and his family are the enemies of his happiness. The smartphone screen glows in the dark of his cheap room, displaying dozens of unread messages from Mom and his children, being systematically ignored and deleted. Every deleted message is another brick in the wall he is building between himself and the world that knew his real name. The financial drain is rarely a theft. It is a voluntary tribute paid by the victim to keep the fantasy world from collapsing. In Pattaya, respect is bought by the hour. When the money stops, the music stops. But David does not see the financial drain as a loss. He views it as a necessary tax he gladly pays to keep the illusion alive. His savings account, built over 25 years of hard work, begins to hemorrhage. $50,000, $30,000, $10,000. Each transaction is a small, quiet step toward ruin. Yet, he convinces himself that he is in control. He tells himself he will start an online business. He tells himself he will teach English. He tells himself anything to avoid looking at the numbers. Then comes the day his balance hits the critical threshold: $1,000. This is the point where survival instinct should kick in. But for the trapped mind, panic triggers a desperate gamble. Instead of using the last $1,000 to buy a flight home, David decides to double down. He puts the money into a local bar venture, or hands it to his partner to build a house in her village. It is a high-stakes play to prove to himself that he belongs here, that he is not just another tourist who ran out of cash. Here is the "wait, what?" of stage 4. The bar he buys into isn't a scam run by a shadowy figure. The paperwork, the land registry, the partnership agreement, it is all perfectly legal under Thai law. It states clearly that he owns absolutely nothing. And he signs it anyway, smiling. He literally buys his own eviction. No words, just the numbers falling. And then the final stop. A dusty ATM down a dark alleyway in Soy Buakau. The screen flashes. Transaction declined. David stands in the humid night air. The machine does not spit out bills. It spits out reality. He has nothing left to give. He stands before the flashing screen, his face illuminated by the harsh blue light of the machine. He tries again. He tries a different card. The result is the same. The empty plastic card is returned to his trembling fingers. The financial bloodletting is complete. He has traded his entire life's work for 6 months of feeling like a king. And now, the crown is gone. The final stage of the trap is the most tragic. When a man in Pattaya runs out of money, he faces a choice. He can contact his family, admit defeat, and return home in deep humiliation. Or he can disappear entirely. Most choose the latter. They become what locals call ghost expats. Men who live illegally on overstay, hiding in the cheapest, darkest rooms of the city. They sleep on concrete floors. They eat scraps. Their skin is burnt, their clothes are tattered, and their passports are long expired. Yet, they stay. They prefer the slow, grinding ruin in the heat of Pattaya over the cold reality of returning home as a failure. Here is the shocking contradiction of the ghost phase. The immigration police often know exactly where these men are. They don't deport them immediately, because a broke Westerner on overstay is a self-funding source of fines whenever they need to hit a precinct quota. They are allowed to exist as living ghosts, tolerated only as long as they can scratch together a few hundred baht to stay under the radar. There are estimated to be thousands of these men hiding in plain sight. You see them sitting on the beach at dawn, staring at the horizon. They do not speak to tourists. They are invisible. Many of these men, says a local expat counselor, have completely lost touch with who they were. They cannot go back because the person who left the West no longer exists. If they return, they are returning to a grave. So they stay here, living as ghosts, waiting for the end. David is now one of them. He no longer visits the neon streets. He sits on a concrete bench at Pattaya Beach at 4 in the morning. The street sweepers are cleaning up the plastic cups and broken glass from the night before. He has no money, no identity, and no way out. But as he looks at the dark sea, he still prefers this heat over the cold rain of London. In the eyes of the law, he is a criminal on overstay. In the eyes of his family, he is dead. But in his own mind, he is still holding on to the last shred of his pride. To return home penniless, broken, and exposed as a fool is a fate worse than death. So he fades into the background, a permanent shadow in a city that only values light. Pattaya is not an evil place. It is merely a mirror. It reflects back to you exactly what you are missing inside. If you are lonely, it offers connection. If you are powerless, it offers worship. But these things are not real. They are a performance. To enjoy Pattaya without losing your mind, you must learn to watch the play without trying to own the theater. You must treat the city as an interactive stage. Enjoy the music, enjoy the laughter, enjoy the company. But never, for a single second, believe that the stage is your home. But here is the ultimate, mind-bending contradiction of survival. The real test isn't leaving Pattaya. The real test is coming back to your home country and realizing that the normal life you returned to, the 9-to-5 grind, the quiet isolation, the digital distance, is actually the real illusion. If you cannot accept that both worlds are constructed theaters, you will always be running from one to the other. The moment you step off the plane at Suvarnabhumi Airport, you must ask yourself one crucial question. What am I running from? If you cannot answer that honestly, the city will answer it for you. And its answer will cost you everything. The half-unpacked suitcase. We are back in the cheap hotel room. The fan is still spinning. But this time, the story is different. David is not staring at the ceiling. He is standing by the bed. His face is calm. He looks at his passport. He picks it up, slips it securely into his jacket pocket, and zips his suitcase shut. He walks to the door. He turns off the light, and he steps out into the bright, clean daylight. To survive Pattaya, a man must understand the difference between attention and affection. The attention can be bought, and there is no shame in enjoying the transaction as long as you treat it as such. But the moment you mistake a commercial exchange for genuine love, the trap begins to close. David's choice to pack his bags and leave is the ultimate act of defiance against the illusion. He chooses the hard, gray reality of his life over the soft, golden lie of the city. He chooses to keep his soul. Pattaya doesn't actually steal your identity. It merely provides the mirror and the medicine that allows you to watch yourself willingly. But my Imagine people erase it. True survival in the city of neon starts with mastering the man in the mirror. It is the understanding that the warmth you feel here is a reflection of your own light projected onto a stage. If you do not stage, if you do not bring your own foundation, the city will build one for you out of sand and neon. And when the tide comes in, if the masterminds for you is absolutely perfecting the meter and still them back into the city, if they're so mostly important to the day, go to Pattaya, walk the neon streets, drink the cold beer. But when the vacation Facebook, when you feel quickly, have the courage to pack your bag, put your passport in your pocket, and go home. Because the greatest strength a man can have in the city of illusions, who he is when the lights go out. and because the greatest strength a man can have when the lights go out. Because the greatest strength a man can have when the lights go out. Because the greatest strength a man can have when the lights go out. Chapter Do not fear the city, but do not underestimate it either. It has dismantled stronger men than wheat. Wheat will turn to be many very started. Do not fear the city, but do not underestimate it either. It has do for them Phoenician praclins that I didn't feel what, but do not underestimate it aver. Do not fear the city, but do not underestimate it for you, but do not underestimate it either. It has dismantled stronger men than wheat, but do not underestimate it aver. It has turned millionaires into beggars and fathers into ghosts. The trap is not the girls, the bars, or the nightlife. The trap is your own desire to escape. Because the greatest strength a man can have, but the more than main made to escape. The trap is not the girls, the bars into ghost, and fathers into ghost. The trap is not the girls. The brain feels around them. The trap is not the city. We're moving would have the stage for the city. The trap is not the girls, the bars into ghost. The trap is not the girls, the bars into ghost. The trap is not the girls. The trap is not the girls. The feel is not the girls. The trap is not the girls. The trap is not the girls. The feel is not the girls. The trap 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 is not the girls. But trap is not the girls. The trap is not the girls' own desire to escape. It's if you can face that desire to escape. And if you can face that desire to escape. If you can face that desire to escape, which mentioned most for water would joke. If you can face that desire to escape, which when you want to into, between as walk through the fire of Pattaya and emerge untouched. But if you walk in blind, looking for a savior, you will find that the only thing you save is a one-way ticket to your own erasure.